here in 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I had the pleasure of interviewing our guest speaker about a year ago. And wow, time flies, and I'm so happy that she's come back because I know she's going to share a lot of knowledge as this is such a relevant topic. We had a lot of people sign up, and I know a lot of you will either be joining us live or rewatching this. And I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. Whether you are here live with us or you're rewatching this, we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join this conversation. And if you are here live, you can participate in a number of ways. You can turn your camera on if you feel called to do so. This is a safe digital space on my end. I'm not afraid to kick anyone out if we aren't being respectful of everyone's voices. So just know that. I believe in visibility. I want to see your face. I want to encourage each other. So if you feel called to do so, turn your cameras on. No shame if not. I know that digital fatigue is real. So, you won't be shamed if you don't turn your camera on. I do invite you all, though, to use the chat box throughout this conversation. And you can throw any questions, any reflections, any tips and tricks of your own, any projects that you're working on. I really want to also use this time to actively network and form meaningful connections here. So feel free to use the chat box and, open some dialogue with some folks here who are joining for the same conversation here. So you already have some common interest there. Now, if you'd like to hop off mute at any point of this conversation, just raise your emoji hand and let me know that you'd like to be given permission to hop off mute. If you don't know how to raise your emoji hand or you don't want to, you don't have to, you can use the chat box. You can write to me privately or publicly, letting me know that you'd like to hop off mute, and I will give you permission to do so. Now, if you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And this is a nice time to remind you all that if you signed up for this conversation, be looking out for a rewatch email because that email will have a link to this recorded chat, along with any resources that our guest speaker might bring up throughout the hour. So look out for that rewatch email. Send the rewatch link to folks, your community, your peers, your colleagues, your boss, anyone who you think needs to hear this conversation. And again, be looking out for ways to connect with our guest speaker, with myself, and with everyone who's joined this call in the chat box. We'll drop those links later on. Now, we'd also love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store for you. And if this is your first chat that you're joining with Power to Fly and I'm moderating, I just want to take a couple seconds to introduce myself. So again, my name is Mariella Marie, originally from Los Angeles, California. Our guest speaker is also calling from Southern California, so I'm already happy to be vibing with her on that note there. I'm currently living in Patagonia, and as many of you know, I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence at home, at work, and at play. So I might bring some of my reflections to that note, and you all are welcome to philosophize or, share actionable steps on how we can practice emotional intelligence a little more in our lives. Otherwise, I invite you all to support the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for our newsletter, or I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. And I just want to remind you all that I'm going to extend an invitation for those who are joining live to network in the chat box. I'll drop my LinkedIn. You don't have to drop a LinkedIn. You can drop your website, your preferred ways of connecting, any projects that you want to highlight and praise. Be looking out for that invitation. So start grabbing your links now because I want you all to start to form some meaningful connections here. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Diana, who's calling all the way from Pasadena in Southern California. Let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Well, I'm really excited to be here because I was in a similar boat many years ago, looking for a new job and not wondering what to do. And I made connections with Catherine Zaleski, one of the co-founders of Power to Fly last year. I interviewed her. She called me back and said, hey, would you be on our program? So we've been together now for, I guess it's a 1-year anniversary. And so I originally started my career in human resources, made some career changes, and here I am now as a career consultant, helping people find job fulfillment and the dream jobs that keep them happy in life.
Beautiful. And before we set the stage for today's conversation, can you remind folks how they can connect with you when we finish this chat?
Thank you for that. So Job Talk Weekly, we have a podcast and there's the website. And at the end, I'll also be talking a little bit about some of our group coaching to take this work to the next level at jobtalkweekly.com/group. You can follow us on socials as well, LinkedIn, Facebook. Job Talk Weekly is the place to find us.
Awesome. Great. So Diana, I'd love for you to set the stage for today's conversation by covering the principal themes that you plan to go over. And I know that you've got a beautiful, outline ready for us to dive into and unpack. I'm going to ask some questions that folks have submitted previous to this conversation. So just set the stage up for us so that we can be comfortable and confident for the next, 55 minutes that we've got here.
Thank you. I will, because I was in this boat many years ago when I was in my young 20s and I was working in a corporate job in downtown Chicago, leading the life I thought I was supposed to be leading, but it just wasn't quite there for me. Something was missing and I didn't know what, and I didn't know how to go about finding it. And it was a friend who introduced me to a career exploration workshop with a brochure, an actual physical pamphlet. Can you imagine that? And I attended a 2-day workshop. And I was thrilled because what it did is it gave me a framework. And through going through some steps similar to what I'm going to go through today, it gave me the clarity on how to use my strengths and tap into my interests. And then that gave me the confidence to make the change that I needed to do. So here I am many years later as a career coach, helping other people find the fulfillment that is important to them. Because I have been around the block enough to see people who settle, they wonder what if, and, I want to help prevent regret. I want to maximize your opportunities for happiness, not just minimize those bad days at work, but really help you figure out today, is your current job serving you? And if not, how can you change that? Or maybe is it time to take another step? So the goal is to walk through some criteria to give you that clarity and confidence, because a lot of times we go with our gut. And our gut is important. I really believe in that. But sometimes we need more than that to sort of anchor our decision making. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can open up these great questions that you'll have submitted previous to the conversation. And actually, before we get kicked off with question number one, I just want to highlight where folks are calling from. And then Diana, I know you want to set us up with, your introduction and go through some of, the tools and resources that you use currently, which I think is phenomenal because you're able to give that, real piece as well and practice what you preach and use us, your live callers today to share that. So just so that you can keep in mind, we've got, let's see, Argentina on the line, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Virginia, Chicago, Ontario, Germany, Kentucky. We've got Dayton, Ohio, Austin, Texas. We got Spain, Ontario again, Belmont, California, Minneapolis. We've got San Jose, California, New York City, Toronto, Hawaii. All right, so if you're just joining us, go ahead and start to get the chat box warmed up. Let us know where you are in the world. We would just love to know so that we can make sure that we are covering, this global conversation in a meaningful way. And clearly, as I said in the introduction, we're all interested in the same topic for a reason. In just a few moments, I'm going to ask you all to network and drop those links in the chat box. So be looking out for that invitation. Now, Diana, keep this in mind. We're a global community here when you're, setting us up for success. And I would love to just have you pass the mic to you and just kick us off here before I roll into the questions.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the group a question because there's a variety of people on this workshop today. So when it comes to thinking about leaving your job, I like to think of that decision on a spectrum. Okay, so we're going to use 1 to 5. 5 is you are dying to get out. You might not know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, but you're like, oh man, it is time to leave. I just need some parameters. I need some guidance. And then on 1, you're thinking about it. The idea comes into your mind. You're obviously here. So the thought has crossed your mind, but you're not quite sure. And then in the middle, somewhere around 3, I think that's the hardest place for a lot of people to be because your job isn't so bad that it's forcing you out, but it's also not giving you enough of what you need, but you need that urgency. You need to create some action steps for yourself. And that's why I think today is going to be really important. So you should acknowledge yourself for giving yourself, an hour to think, to assess, to reflect. And like you said, we're going to send this video out so you can come back and think about it again. And, you make those decisions that are right for you. So go ahead and let's see where people are on the spectrum of 1 to 5. 5 being, yes, I'm really sure that I want to leave, or 1 is, this is just a new thought for me and I got to figure it out, or somewhere in between.
Well, we got quite a few 5s, which I love because that means like right now they need this advice right now. They need to connect with you right now. The time is now. It's no better time. So we got a lot of 5s, and those were actually the first to drop their numbers in the chat. So clarity on 5. We've got a couple threes, so a couple who are, in that, which you also just described as being a tough space because you're kind of in between, you don't know. I see, we've got everywhere really on the spectrum. I don't see a lot of ones. I see mostly threes, fours, and fives.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through some criteria that sort of help you anchor your decision. Because I think too often what happens is people are very well intended, by the way, right? So you tell your friends or family, yeah, I'm thinking of looking for a new job. And your mom says, well, why would you want a new job? You work for Coca-Cola. That's such a great company. And then it stops you in your tracks because you don't have a very specific reason for wanting to leave. And so that delays your process. Whereas if you think through some of these criteria that we're going to talk through today, and then you have that conversation and you tell your mom, I'm thinking of leaving my job. And she says, why do you want to leave? Coca-Cola is such a great company. You say, yeah, but it doesn't give me the flexibility I need, or it doesn't have the job growth that I'm looking for. And she says, oh, okay, so what are you going to do next? Entirely different conversation, does not set you back, helps move you forward. So that's why I think it's good to have some criteria to hang on to.
I love that. And can you just jump right into, what kind of criteria we can be looking for? And I know that there were some questions on, what are some red flags or signs that we should be aware of? So if you can kind of approach that question as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely get to that. I did take a look at the questions in advance, and most of them will be touched on today. But one of the first things that I like to talk about up front are the personal elements of your job, because it's okay. It's okay to give yourself permission to say, I need a different job because this job doesn't give me the flexibility I need. It doesn't give me the commute, the remote work that I need, or the benefits. When I think back to my time in Chicago, that's why it's so great to see people from the Midwest here too. I think of how we took the train and we took the bus and it took us an hour in the snow, and that's just what you did. And now I am in a different state of my life where I actually made a job change because of that commute. And I did this several years ago, and I got back an extra hour in my day. So think about an extra hour, an extra 5 hours in your week. What would you do with that? And I just think when I was really junior in my career, I never would have thought that it was okay to make a job change because of commute. But many years later, I certainly did that. So the personal elements of the job are the things that make your life easier. Remote work, flexibility, benefits. That's a big one that you, and if there's any other partner in your life, that you have to discuss and sometimes negotiate. But those are the personal things that employers will do to try and keep you. So it's okay for you to go ahead and make those decisions around some of these personal elements now.
I love that because it is putting the ball back in our court. And oftentimes, especially if we're in a place for too long, because, we're getting too comfortable. We don't really know how to answer that question for ourselves, right? Like, even if, someone on the outside asks us, well, why are you leaving? You're at this, company that has all, the way that I see them, they're the best company to work at. But if you aren't feeling fulfilled, which is the biggest piece of the pie, in my opinion, I love that this conversation is bringing us back there, because if I can just lace this with some emotional intelligence, that self-awareness piece is key. So if you are trying to do this to please other people, or you're trying to do this for like any external reason, obviously we need money in order to pay, for things and to make sure that we're safe. But knowing when at that time, when we're at that crossroads, I'll say, where we can make some different choices and maybe get some time back, like you said in your experience, where you don't have to commute for the hour. You can have that time to do maybe something else that would fulfill you a little more. So I really appreciate your perspective there. All right, so we've got folks saying, totally agree on commute. It's a dread. Thank you for dropping that in the chat box. We've got, for me, it's benefits, pay, remote work isn't an option, greater flexibility, and there's no room for promotion or growth. Great. Thank you all for dropping your reflections in the chat. Diana, would you like to reflect on any of these comments?
They are spot on. And actually, they let me segue into then what I call the professional elements of your job. Someone mentioned growth. So those personal things are the things that make your life easier. The professional things are things that are really tied to your job. Is it specific expertise that you're trying to learn? Are you getting this at your current company? Are you getting exposure to a certain industry, software, or field? Do you have opportunities for growth in the next year? I would say, even just sort of put it in 1 year at a time, that might be a way to adjust that for yourself. And if you're at a place where you need mentorship, Are you getting that? I remember once I went to a new company and I was really excited to work with this person, and she quit 6 months in. So I had to pivot internally to get what I needed. So it's not just someone who's new to their career that needs mentorship. Perhaps you have been in the workforce for 20 years, but you made a change and you're at a really big company. Does your boss, does the leadership have time to show you the inner workings, the dynamics of that company? And are you getting that in your current job? And then the other one that I want to leave people with, because a lot of folks had asked about this on the Q&A, is about leadership, managing people, managing teams. Is that something that's important to you? And can you get it? Because you have to look at the current situation that you're in. Maybe you're not a boss there, but have you talked to your boss about managing a team? Do you see that on the horizon? Is that something that's going to come your way, if that is indeed important to you?
I want to jump into, I mean, there's so many questions that relate the personal with the professional. And oftentimes it's like, how do you, what is work-life balance? Should we call it work-life integration? Can you take the personal out of the professional? Like there are these big, chewy questions that over the past couple of years, at least with me moderating on Power to Fly, bring this up. So I'm just going to ask maybe a couple questions that can bridge the professional with the personal here. So let's see here. How to distinguish a midlife crisis from the need for a new job?
Yeah, I don't know that you can distinguish those things. I mean, I think one of those things might play into each other. I think you have to look at what you want from your career in the next 5 years. Don't make a change. Please don't quit your jobs tomorrow, by the way. Give yourself a little bit of time to think about all the things that we're going to discuss today. But really, it is all part of a puzzle. And if you look at your life in the next 5 years, where do you want to be? And what's going to happen in your life? Are you going to go through life changes? Marriage, divorce, our kids coming into your life, our kids leaving out of the house, what's going to happen on the horizon? And it's okay to say, I'm at a midlife crisis and this is not working for me anymore. So there is a point where it's hard to say where one stops and the other begins. But it in your gut. And that's why we give you some of these things just to sort of hang your hat on to see, oh yeah, at the end of the day, I am getting what I need for my job. So maybe I just need to take a sabbatical. Maybe I need a nice month-long vacation. Maybe I need a weekend with my friends or whatever that is. But it's one of those things where you kind of know it when you feel it, but it gives you these criteria, give you something to really, you sort of center that decision-making for yourself.
I love that. I love that. So I know we're going to talk about company culture in a little bit. Can I ask some more personal, professional questions before we go there? Okay. All right. I love that. It seems that age seems to be a factor that's coming up in these questions, and also maybe unclarity with lack of clarity with what is fulfilling to that person and how they can, find that fulfillment in the work that they do. I love that you also said seeing work as like, how are you giving your service, or how's your work serving you? It's like a partnership, right? Like we're spending our energy and our time for several hours a week, and we don't want that to exhaust us and overwhelm us. We want it to balance us at some capacity and give at least, give us something that will make us feel better instead of worse. Just to say that in one respect here. So let's move on to this question. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say I have some remarks about fulfillment. Do you want me to do that now, or do you want to take this question first?
Go for it.
Okay. So, but we have to handle the age thing. Let's handle the age thing, because I did see that there were a few questions about how do you know if it's too late? You've been in the workforce for a long time. I get it. Is it too late? Should you just sort of hunker down? And I will tell the story of a woman I worked with last year, Margaret, who sent me an email. And she said, there's this big job. I'm going to apply for it. Can we talk about this? And I said, yes. And we spent time to talk about it in a day. Big job. And sure enough, level. And time she had since she had sent me the email and we set up the time when we talked, and she said, yeah, I'm not going to apply for it. And I said, well, tell me more. Tell me what's going on there. And she said, Diana, I'm almost 60. And, I don't know that I want to invest the energy in getting to know a whole new team and proving myself again. And that's okay. Her kids had just graduated college and they were settled. They were on their own. So it's okay to make that decision for yourself that, you know what, I don't want to climb the corporate ladder anymore. I've got a great title. I've got some great work. So when people ask about, is it too late? I would ask, is this your last job before retirement? How many years do you have to go before an estimated retirement time, whether it's 65, 67, or whatever that number is for you? Because if you still have 5 years to go, that's a long make most out of that. And this then taps into one of the other questions we got. Is it about different? So if you go through all these things and you realize, wow, I actually have a big, if I just take a in a different way, if I reframe and come to work and show up in a different way, grateful for all the things I have, then does that make you more fulfilled? Does that make you more satisfied? And if that's not the case, then maybe there is still a chance for you to do something different. I'm always an advocate that it's never too late. Maybe you're not going to go back to law school and expect to make that money up, but if you are really thriving in the last 5 years of your career, think of how important that's going to be, because let's say it's 60 to 65 and you make a shift at 60 that really puts you just in a little bit of a different industry, a slightly different type of company, and you are really thriving. They're going to ask you to stay on. So then when you turn 65, well, maybe you can do some contract work, you can do some part-time work, some jobs here and there, and they are attracted to you because you have been such an advocate, and we know that there's going to be a workforce drain. We've been talking about it, right? They're going to want to hold on to you in a part-time or in a contract way. So if you can make sure that those last 5 years of your full-time career are really thriving for you, then it'll show, and you might be able to then extend it and enjoy it and keep doing it for fun.
I love that perspective. Thank you so much for adding that perspective that I've never heard, actually, like using the last or for actually asking yourself, do you want this to be the last project or role, or just partnership with the company before you decide to retire? And then that just gives you empowerment to do whatever you want and hopefully have fun towards the end. So I appreciate that.
Oh, good. Actually, it's funny because sometimes I'll say to a client, like, is this your last job before retirement? And they say, oh God, no. I say, oh, okay, well, there you go. That's a good indicator. That's one of those flags that, okay, let's get going on something else. And we all know that we have a multitude of careers now. We have 2 or 3 different careers, or we have at least 5 or 6 different jobs. So it's okay to make changes later in life. Definitely, whatever later in life is for you.
Yes, and we've just got folks chiming in here that this has been very helpful. Thanks for sharing the story and perspective. Someone earlier wrote, burnout is my biggest reason for looking for a new job. I'm also 58, so age is a key roadblock. And I know that this person isn't alone in the way that they're thinking this. Can you give a comment on that?
Yeah, I think burnout is obviously very real. And I would look at 2 things. Can you change the burnout situation at your current job? Is there a way of taking some time off? Is there a way of having someone else join your team so that way you can spread the work and responsibility? If not, how can you make that change then? If you do want to work for another 5 to 7 years, I think one of the best things you can be doing is networking in a really positive way. You don't have to lead with, I'm burnt out. Always lead with the positive. The glass is half full today. You just talk to friends and people who are in your field, professional friends and colleagues, and say, yeah, I've been doing some interesting work over here, but I'm looking for something different, and I will be retiring in 10 years or so. But for now, I want to be able to adapt or put my skills to work, maybe at a smaller company, or maybe at a mission-driven organization, or maybe just at a different organization that has more meaning. And I think people are really open to that. But if you are making a change, especially when you're worried about gender, I think that's when networking is going to be so key, because the people who have worked with you in your last job, maybe even 2 jobs ago, they know how awesome you are, and they're going to help open the door, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, you need to talk to Mariella because she's looking for something new, and I've worked with her before and she's fantastic. No one's going to care how old you are once you have that personal referral. And I got to tell you, of all the times that I've hired people, having a personal referral is so helpful for me, because I don't want crazy, I don't want drama. And the only way that I know that I'm not going to get drama is if a trusted work colleague refers someone to me. So I think that's where the networking is going to be really helpful for that person.
I love that. And actually, you just set me up really nicely to invite people who are here live with us to start to network in the chat box. So I already dropped my LinkedIn, which is my preferred way of connecting. Please drop your preferred way of connecting in the chat box. And I encourage you all to reach out to a couple folks. Why? Because you're already, a part of a session that you are interested in. So you have something in common already. And then just as Diana was saying, you never know, if you start to engage with each other and really like the things that they're posting, or really like, what they are, how they're sharing themselves at their company or with their organization, you can start to have them in the forefront of your mind. And if that time comes, mentorship, networking, that, opening the door, there's so many possibilities. And I know that it can be really tough or frustrating, or maybe even like a little stale to say the word networking. So I like to say building meaningful relationships. And well, we have at our disposal, these ways of networking on LinkedIn, for example, or here in this chat box. Using your website, using, your I've seen people even drop their emails. I'm a firm believer in alternative social media as well. So if you got some new social media links out there that you want to drop, please, I would love to know. So yes, please. And I know that we aren't at that point to talk about networking yet, but just as folks are dropping their preferred ways of networking, Diana, anything you want to highlight there? You've already said such great things already, but I want to give you the mic again.
When it comes to networking, one of the things that I suggest to people is don't expect magic on the first date. You would never marry someone, rarely, I should say, you would rarely marry someone the minute you met them. So you have to manage your expectations. If you reach out to me or Mariella and say, hey, I want to follow up on that conversation, I may not offer you a job right then and there, but we will have built a relationship, like you said. I think you really hit it on the head there when it's about building relationships. And then you keep in touch. And then every once in a while, I know that Mariella is really into, I know she lives in Patagonia. I'll just pick on Patagonia sportswear. And I see this great article about what Patagonia, the company, is doing, because they do a lot of great work, and I'll shoot it to her. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just making a connection, and I'm just thinking of her and showing them thinking of her in a meaningful way based on something that I heard her say. So just do those things. And then who knows, maybe 9-10 months down the road, Mariella has a job and says, gosh, Diana was in touch and I really like talking with her. I'm just going to call out to her and see if she's interested in talking about this. So they can happen very organically. I've seen it happen. And so I think if you manage your own expectations and keep building that network now, like you said, being on LinkedIn, here's another tip. A lot of people are afraid to go on LinkedIn and to expose themselves as looking for a job. There's nothing wrong with being on LinkedIn and clicking on someone's article and giving the thumbs up to somebody else's post. So just be on LinkedIn once a week. That way it's not a surprise when you are on LinkedIn. And that way you don't have to worry about anybody else thinking that it's been a
Yes, I think that's a great point. I think we might be getting a little lost connection there, but I think that's a great point that you're making as far as using, just reshaping the word network to build meaningful relationships. And I know that we're using the word network now because that is what we've been using, and that's what's available. But I think that if I did like a poll right now, we would probably, all of us would say, we don't want, superficial connections. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's doing something because what the status quo says that we should do it. It's like, actually, how can we go deeper? And, you're talking about Patagonia, and that makes me ask you some questions. Oh, did you know that this, and then we can just keep the ball going back and forth, versus it being like a flat connection, which I'm not really interested in. And I think I've heard a lot of people voice that they aren't interested in as well. So this is, a great opportunity to connect. I'm asking you all to do that in the chat box. And if it is your first time doing something like this, don't worry. I think that it's nice to just put your, dive in head first, get over that fear. And if you've had, some uncomfortable situations happen where maybe you feel like, oh, this isn't for me because nobody's responding. Again, I think you should take what Diana is saying and go a step further to make it seem more meaningful. Read some of the content people are writing. Let people know about what your frustrations are in the job search so that maybe the algorithm can get better on LinkedIn too. All right, so let's talk about company culture. How can you set us up for, just understanding that part of this whole pie?
Yeah, and someone asked in the questions about values. And I think if you think about company culture, there are a lot of things. And I think my internet connection a little slow down my speech here to make sure that I'm being captured. But company culture is so important because, at the end of the day, do you really leave over pay? You leave over people, right? So you want to think about the team. Do you at least have a rapport? You don't have to hang out with them on weekends, but are these people that you trust and respect, and you feel that trust and respect back? Hopefully you have a little bit of camaraderie. That's really helpful. So think of the company culture as your immediate team and your boss, because that's the person who's going to go to bat for you. That's the person who's going to stand up for you when mistakes are made. And hopefully mistakes are made, because that means you're taking and you're in your comfort zone. If boss you're back, then it's okay. That's such a unique conversation for everyone. So here's one way to do it is think about the values that are important, diversity, and then say, okay, what does that look like in the office? What does an office with a high level of trust look like? Or what does an office that doesn't have trust and respect look like? That might be a place where people don't give you credit for your ideas. That might be a place where people repeat things that you say that you thought were in confidence. Look at those examples of what the values mean to you, because we can all say that we want culture where people respect each other, but what does that really mean for you? And then think about it, look around and say, have I been feeling this over the past year? And I think one of the other questions that came through was how to tell if some of these elements that are frustrating you about your job are unique to the pandemic, or are they long-standing problems? One thing to think about is that the pandemic has brought out the best and the worst of us. So you'll see that in the office. Is your manager going out of her way to make sure you have what you need because you have 2 kids doing remote learning, or you have kids who have to get tested again, things like that. It really will show us who we are as people. And as far as our actual return to an office, that keeps changing. And a lot of companies are sort of leaving that open-ended right now. So you've really got to think through, was this a value that existed during or before the pandemic, and how does it show up now during the pandemic?
Thank you so much for bringing, the relevancy of today, that we are going through a pandemic and that has affected millions and millions of people. And so, yes, that is a big fat question mark. And how are you happy with the way that your company has dealt with it or not? And does it, as everyone is reshaping their value systems, their policies, their purpose, does it still vibe with you or not? And I think that brings us back to how you kicked us off with, the personal side of this question. That self-awareness piece, and then eventually finding the confidence to either speak to someone or build your network in a certain way so that you can, make the next step. And actually, I had a private message here that speaks about, a serious lack of trust and respect from part of the team that isn't really their team, but affects all of us. So it's kind of like, I guess maybe like a sideways, if you work hard as a manager, or if you're part of a team and you've work to build trust, but then, there are other departments that aren't doing that. Is that a big cue for you? Do you need to have some internal conversations? What would you say, Diana?
Yeah, you definitely do, because even if they aren't your immediate team, you have to think through, how much do I interact with these people? I think about some of the work I've done before where I needed to rely on a separate marketing team, or I needed to rely on a separate finance manager. And when I had a great finance manager, that was really helpful for me. But when I had someone who was not helpful, that was a real barrier, and it really brought me down. So it's either a conversation with that person directly to just get some clarity to make sure we're on the same page. I think you see that a lot when you have different functions, whether it is marketing or finance. And sometimes people are just moving really fast. So I like to give them the benefit of the doubt and maybe just have a conversation with that person and just say, hey, I want to get on the same page about how we communicate and how we move forward. And one of the things that we will talk about before the session ends is asking for what you need, because then you'll know if it was a mistake, if this was, one person having a bad day, or, this is who they are, this is the culture of the organization, and it's not going to change. So then you have that information to make that choice. And it is unfortunate that maybe your team is really together, but if you have to rely on this other marketing team to get your work done and they're not with you, that is going to be a problem for you down the road.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to raise a private question here, and then Diana, I'm getting just a little bit of feedback from your mic on your blouse there. If you can just push it up a little, or your hair. I hear you clearly, but I just want to make sure we hear you super clearly. All right, so we've got a message here, private message. A lot, and they are unwilling, and there is no accountability. They are their own managers and don't report to same people, but affect us all. They are unwilling to talk. So I know that a lot of people are feeling that same sentiment. So thank you for that private message. Just so that we don't focus on the negative, let's move on to this question that I think can probably tackle what this private message is about. So what are some reasonable requests we can ask of our current teams and organizations? I'm not sure of my options, and I'm worried about unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, I did see a question like this come through. Well, I would look through, let's say you're talking about remote work and you want more remote or you want more flexibility. Did that exist before the pandemic? What did it look like during the pandemic? And do you see other people getting what they need? Maybe they just asked for it. And sometimes your boss just isn't thinking. If Mariella asked me that she needs to be remote on Mondays and Fridays, and I said, oh, okay. And it's not that I don't want to give it to Maria. Maria didn't ask, and I didn't think about it. So asking for what you need is going to be really important. And it's up to you to sort of gauge, what it's like in your office. And I will give the example of a woman I know who worked at a K through 12 school for about 2 or 3 years. And she was an admin. Okay. So she was not faculty. She was not with students. She was in the office. But after the pandemic started to change into whatever version it is today, people were coming back. The school was teaching on campus. They were teaching in person. So they expected all employees to come back. And she asked if she could be remote. And they said, no, our faculty are back. Our cafeteria workers are back. We want all our employees back for the sake of equity. And she ended up leaving because hers was a job that could be done elsewhere. So when you ask yourself these questions of what's possible, and can you get them? Then the next decision for you is, am I willing to leave over that?
Great, great. I love that advice. Okay, let's move into this next question here. I'd be happier in my current role if I had more opportunities to grow professionally to achieve my goal of leadership. How should I approach my manager about this? Any extra tips for managers who are less than ideal? For example, they're territorial, unsupportive of advancement of a department, or above themselves. And I feel like this is under the umbrella of company culture. So that's why I'm throwing this in now.
Yeah, just throw it in there. You need to prepare and have that list of the things that you've been doing and how you've mastered your job, but to take your job to the next level, to contribute more, again, lead with the positive. You want to contribute more to the company. You'd like to take on a different project. You'd like to lead this team of 3 people. And what does your boss, Mariella is my boss, Mariella, what else do you think I need to accomplish that? And have that conversation with them. And then be ready for one of 2 answers. They might say yes, they haven't thought about it, or they might say no. And then you just have to be ready for that answer. If it is no, again, does that give you then the green light that you need to leave? And I will say it is very unfortunate, especially if you've got a territorial person, that they might not respond well. That is life. I wish everyone was as empathetic and understanding as some of the great managers I've had, but there are some managers that get wacky. And I had a friend a few years ago who had been at her company for like 10 years, and she was a real specialist, and she had taken her role as far as it could go. So she decides to talk to her boss about going to another division, staying at the company, but going into another division and leading this new team, leading this new project. And they go out to lunch. And so maybe this is something that you don't want to do. They go out to lunch and she tees up the idea, and they go out for sushi. And he's like, yeah, I don't think so. They drive home in silence. He doesn't want to deal with it. He doesn't talk to her for 3 months. I know that sounds crazy, but it happens. It happens to the most professional people if they are intimidated, if they are threatened, if they don't know how to handle a situation. So don't do it over lunch. Schedule it, prepare for it, but then just make sure that you have your options ready. Like, wow, I was not expecting that. Hopefully you get a little bit, maybe you won't get everything, but you'll get a little bit. And maybe for someone who you know is territorial, you can maybe ask other people, have they worked with the boss before? How'd they get what they need? Maybe just ask for a little bit, see how they respond, and then keep going forward. And then the other thing I wanted to show you guys when it comes to company values, talking about people, I was pleasantly surprised in this month's episode or issue of InStyle magazine with Reese Witherspoon. Okay. There's an interview with Tim Cook, and he talks about values and how the company Apple is so closely aligned with his personal values and what a big difference that makes. And I know that was a question that a lot of people had. And I'll just read to you the one clip that he says that when you find a job that is identical to your values, it's like an epiphany. You don't have to transform yourself to be something different. You're just focused on becoming the best version of yourself. Wow. Talk about a lucky guy who found the right place for him.
Absolutely. I love lucky is definitely key. The utopian question of, what would make you most comfortable, where you can bring your full self and your values align. And I love that. I hope that it's because we've been asking for more diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace, and that has opened up, more opportunities for people to feel aligned, because, that age old, historically speaking, a lot of us have not been able to bring our fullest self to the table and, and help companies grow based on our diversity of thought, all the things that come with DEI. So it's really nice to hear that, someone got lucky, and, hopefully that can be passed on. And I love that they published that there. All right. So I want to actually segue into another question here that kind of toggles between growth and maybe fulfillment, let's say, as well, because I know we're getting into fulfillment in just a moment. So let's just go there. So this question reads, doesn't starting at the entry level mean your years of experience in the current field are useless? And I bring this up now because, you did mention growth. And I love when people speak about non-linear career journeys, and how that can actually be more fulfilling than, thinking you need to climb the ladder because historically speaking, that was what other folks did. So I would love to hear your response to that. The question again is, doesn't starting at the entry level mean your years of experience in the current field are useless?
No, your years of experience are never useless because you were producing, you were contributing in some way. So one of the things I would do is I would zoom out and maybe not worry about the task that you were doing, but I would show you had accomplishments, that you were productive in certain ways, that you showed results, you were adaptable, resourceful, problem solving, things like that are applicable to any company. They're going to want someone who's a problem solver. They're going to want someone who can anticipate needs and act on them. Those are the things that you're going to want to lead with. And this also ties us back to the other person when we talk about networking. And I like to think about it in distance. So the further away you want to shift from your current job, the longer it's going to take you. And I think that means you are going to have to rely on networking a little bit more. But if you are a software engineer and you want to be a software engineer in another company, that shouldn't take you too long because you are applying those skills just to another company. But if you're a software engineer and you want to become a teacher, obviously you're going to have to figure out the education and the things that you're going to need to shift careers. It's going to take you longer, but always they call them soft skills, but I like to think of them as essential skills. It's being proactive. Thank you. Yeah, she saw it. It's also having a good reputation. That's always going to help you. And again, that's where the networking is going to help you, because you're going to meet someone and they're going to say, oh, I used to work with Mariella and she is also interested in becoming a software engineer. Could you talk to her? And so those are the people that are going to help you. And then you can look at those essential skills. And that's what I think that's what the companies are going to really want to be hiring. And a lot of the consultants are suggesting to companies right now to be much more open in the way that they hire, to stop being so micro-focused on, has this person done a certain level of FASB accounting? You've got to really broaden the scope of what you're looking for, because it is going to be a tough marketplace.
Speaking of marketplace, let's talk about this next big fat topic that is all about the dollar bills. So pay, what do you have to say about that?
I know, I leave pay as its own category. Look, it's okay to make pay a priority. And I think if that is one of the things that you take away, especially when it comes to women, sometimes we have let pay take a backseat. Figure out your needs, figure out your wants, but also look at the market. And there are plenty of websites out there that can give you market data. But I think it's really important for you to not get too left behind. Let's say you want to make a concession and you want to work for this company because they're so close to home and you're making a career change and you think that's going to be a good step for you. And that's okay. But don't get so left behind in the pay, because that is a way that companies are going to think of you. They're going to rate your expertise based on what the market is paying. There is a new thing, if you've heard of about pay transparency, it's called salary history ban. Certain states, God bless the state of California, that they no longer can ask how much you make. And that's going to be a big boost for people who are coming from a place where maybe they had to settle or they had some lower pay. But I do want to get very specific on fulfillment. We've kind of talked about fulfillment, zigzagging in and out, but that can be a criteria in of itself, and that's going to be unique to every person on this call. Does your work drain you or does it energize you? That's one way of thinking of it. Does it fill your cup, as we say, or are you busy filling somebody else's cup? Your boss is driving in a Porsche and going to Hawaii, but you are there working 10 hours and stopping at the drive-thru on the way home. So really think about the task that you do and if it makes you excited and you get excited about the little things. Somebody also asked, what are the red flags? And if you aren't taking advantage of some of these optional trainings and these optional opportunities that are coming your way, that could be a sign that this is just doesn't doing it for you anymore.
I love that. I love just the visual even of, are you filling up your own cup or are you filling up someone else's cup? And of course, keeping that optimism, glass half full, but we never want to make sure that we are. I mean, I think, Diana, I love that. I always remind you, do you have your water? Because even in that perspective of the visual of you need to stay hydrated. And that is like a physical representation of make sure your glass is full. And why don't we apply that to our lives and try to, make moves at least. It might take longer than we think, but I think, putting one foot in front of the other will help us get there and hopefully finding like-minded, communities and people that want to support and leverage their social network or, figure out how to advocate. And I don't believe that you have to be a part of a, what are they calling them? Affinity groups, employee resource groups, just within the company. I think you can start that outside in your own community. And I think that would be really interesting to crack that open and see how we are, lifting each other's voices and making sure that we are fulfilled. Because I think if I see that my community is not fulfilled, I'm not going to be as fulfilled, right? So we're making more of a notion to support women in the workplace, to support people of color in the workplace. And I don't know about you all, but over the past couple of years, I feel a different energy. I just feel more excited. I feel like I'm able to share my voice in a different way. When maybe 10 years, 20 years ago, I mean, I don't know that would be in my mother's generation. I don't think that would have been, a focus. So slowly but surely, change comes.
It does. And so speaking of change, I'm going to hop on that. So we've talked about the different things, different elements, whether it's flexibility or pay or growth in your job. List out these things and start prioritizing and really ask yourself, what are your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves? Assess them against your current situation and then ask yourself, what is changeable? There might be things that you can change in the office. There might be things that you can't change, but it's really important to ask and not to skip this step, because if you ask and get what you're looking for, you will feel not only great that you don't have to look for a new job, which involves risk, time, and money, right? But look how empowered you might feel that you asked for something and you got it. And that's a whole nother level of fulfillment then, that the company heard you and they were willing to meet you. Now, if you get the answer that is no, then you have a sign. Then you have that information like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to get the growth potential here. I'm not going to get the title or the pay I want. And then what do I do about it? Then you've given yourself that permission to make those changes, to take the step. And the good thing is that you now have all the criteria in front of you, because you've spent the last 2 weeks or however long you want to take on doing this, really assessing, does this job give you the personal, professional, the cultural things that you need out of work? Is it fulfilling? And does it give you enough pay to help you feel valued? Because if not, then now you can structure your new job based on the things that you've already identified are very, very important to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Actually, this is a good segue into this question here. what are some questions we should ask during screening calls or interviews to assess if this role would meet our expectations? I'm
Yeah.
particularly interested in advancement into leadership, but I don't want to give the impression that I'm not focused enough on the job at hand.
Yeah. I would say also don't be afraid to share what you want, because if that is important to you, then you should bring it up somewhere in the interview. Usually interviews, they are 2 or 3 different conversations, right? The HR manager and a hiring manager and some other folks. So certainly by the second conversation, you could say, I'm really interested in this job about being an accountant at Coca-Cola, but I'd also like to eventually or one day move into management. What do those possibilities look like? How have other people moved into management? So again, you lead with the positive that you're excited about this job, and then eventually one day you might want to explore leadership opportunities. And I think you also need to just not be shy about asking, because if it's important to you, you would be disappointed if you didn't ask for it. And then you get there and then you realize that the road to promotion is long and heavy and not applicable for you.
Yes. So taking action is what, before we wrap up, taking action is like the biggest question, right? Like, how do we take action, right? So we had a bunch of people in the beginning drop a bunch of 5s, ready right now, tomorrow, they want to sign up for the next thing tomorrow. So let's talk a little bit about that, taking action, and something that is a common thread in a lot of these questions that you're totally asking us to demystify, Dana. So I really appreciate that, is to don't be afraid to ask, right? And to just crack that open. So this question reads, is it ever smarter to keep your plans to leave close to the vest? I'd like to avoid any signaling in advance of my decision.
Yeah. I mean, there's a way to ask for what you want, but not say, oh, if I don't get remote work, I'm going to leave. But you can say, I'm really pleased with what's been working here, but I would be interested in more of X. See what they say. And if the answer is no, then you have that information. And then you get into job seeking mode, right? Are you going to be an entire career changer where you need to learn a whole new skill, get some more education, get some more training, or do you just need to find another job? So asking for what you want in a very collegial way. And that's really, it's got to be up to you to ask for what you want and then develop your action plan. That's when you then have to hold yourself accountable, set some target dates. Looking for a job is hard work. And sometimes we do it by ourselves. Holding your cards close to the vest can be helpful in the beginning until you have a sense for what you want. I certainly would not tell my coworkers that I was looking to leave, because that can hurt you in the long run. Even though you think this person is a really good work friend, they might be, but you never know. They might slip, they might say the wrong thing accidentally, and then you feel really exposed, and you don't want to be in that vulnerable of a situation.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so I just to reiterate, taking action. What is your number, people end this call right now, they're getting off this call. What is their first step, taking action to, start to navigate if they want to, or if they've decided that they do want to, what should they do right now when we end this call?
Yeah, they should write up a plan. They should say, who am I going to talk to? What is my goal? And how am I going to get there? And those are the things that we do talk to people about with group coaching, because, sometimes it's like losing weight. It's kind of hard to do it by yourself. That's why there is Weight Watchers. That's why there are fitness boot camps. So you have to say, am I that person that can do it by myself? And I can set up monthly benchmarks to follow an action plan that I have created, or do I need some resources? Do I need some friends? Whether it's just a group of you getting together weekly over coffee, over Zoom, or do you need to go and engage with some resources? Because I know Power to Fly has a Career Changers 1 and 2 on their website. We have things that I can talk about at the end, but you've got to figure out, can you do this by yourself, or do you need some friends to help you along the way?
I love that. So just to remind folks, I hope you have already toggled through the chat, clicked on a couple of those LinkedIns, or maybe saved them all because people have given their consent. And so feel free to connect with folks and start to form some meaningful conversations there. And I also just want to drop in the chat again. I know that Paloma already did, but I'm going to add this again. We have an event coming up at Power to Fly where we specifically talk about pay equity. So advocating for pay equity, which is, also a big fat question mark. How do we make sure that we're getting paid what we should be getting paid, what we want to be getting paid, what we need to be getting paid? And I think that the more we can have these conversations, the more we can advocate for that. So feel free to register for that chat. Now we're coming to our final moments. We've got about 5 minutes left. Diana, you've already dropped a lot of knowledge. Can you just leave us with some food for thought? And then just, again, remind us how we can connect with you, what services you're offering right now, and also maybe just remind folks why you're doing what you're doing, because clearly you have the passion, clearly you've seen success, and just, I just want to shout you out for that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just think job fulfillment has never been more important, but I also think it's never been more possible. I mean, look at what is happening. We see the articles about the Great Resignation and the Great Quit, and we have consulting firms warning, practically begging companies to be more open-minded about how they treat their workforce. So now is the time to ask for what you want. If any of you have already seen friends or family quitting, you know that it's out there. So now is really the time to put yourself first and to figure out what fulfillment looks like for you. We do have a career exploration workshop that helps people take this to the next level, because I do find, like, for me, I'm an extrovert. I like the accountability of some outside folks. So our new group coaching workshop is just 3 sessions. It's 3 Wednesday nights in a row, about 5 to 7 people. So you do get a little bit more personal interaction. You get some response to your LinkedIn profile, some response to your resume, but it gives you the jump start you need, some hands-on coaching and guidance. And my husband always reminds me of Serena Williams, who he and I both agree is the greatest athlete ever. She has a tennis coach. Serena Williams has a tennis coach, because every once in a while we need some outside perspective. So whether it's a friend who can read your resume, maybe your old boss, that's always someone to go back to, someone one job ago who knows you well, have them give you some feedback on your resume. But we are here to help you find that job fulfillment again, because I was really lucky that when I was in my 20s, a friend put a brochure in front of me that talked about careers and how to get more out of life. So whether that's getting more out of your current job or finding a new one, that's where we come in to help you map out the success and the fulfillment and the action plan to find that dream job. We do have the podcast that drops Wednesday. Oh, and I need to do a shout out to Lauren Haggerty. I don't know if folks are really interested in more about remote work, because I know that has been a very, very big topic for everyone. And Lauren Haggerty is the director of marketing at Power to Fly, but she was doing remote well before anybody else, well before that was a common term. So she's on this Wednesday's episode, and she talks about how to talk about remote in the interview, which, is kind of frightening for some people to ask for what they want so early on. But she brings a terrific, successful perspective from it. And she supervises and oversees like a team of 20 people remotely. So I think her conversation this Wednesday hopefully is going to be really helpful.
Great. And how can we access that link if we want to listen? What's the website for your podcast?
Yeah, jobtalkweekly.com. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, Job Talk Weekly. And our episode with Lauren will drop on Wednesday.
Awesome. Any other links you want to remind us of, the website, your LinkedIn, things like that? And again, thank you so much for your knowledge today. And I'm happy that I get to talk to you at least once a year virtually.
Yeah, we'll have to do it more. Jobtalkweekly.com. I look forward. I'm happy to answer any questions. Last year, a couple of people messaged me on LinkedIn. I was happy to chat with them as my gift to you to start off the new year right.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Diana. Thank you, everyone who's joined us live. If you're rewatching, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next Chat and Learn. Good luck, everyone. Bring your best self, your authentic selves. We need you, and you can do it. I believe in you. Diana does too. All right. Ciao.